Here we are at the 28th Annual La Jolla Energy Conference, and we're very pleased to welcome for the first time to La Jolla, Kevin Ramnarine from Trinidad and Tobago, former Minister of Energy. Welcome to La Jolla.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm very pleased to be here.
It's great to be able to talk about Trinidad and Tobago at this year's conference. So just take a couple seconds and update us. I mean, Trinidad and Tobago, when you were minister, it's an oil and gas country, but primarily a natural gas. It's a pioneer in LNG, liquefied natural gas exports. But yet you've been trying to find more gas, and you're not quite finding the amounts of gas you need. What's going on with Trinidad, particularly in the gas market?
Well, Trinidad created a very large domestic demand for natural gas over the last 20 years. A large part of that demand puzzle is liquefied natural gas, LNG. So we've been experiencing now shortages in natural gas for the last 9 years. What that means is that we've been running short by sometimes 10, 20% of what the plants need. So there is a continuous effort to find gas in Trinidad to continue to feed the LNG plants and to continue to feed the methanol and ammonia plants and the power sector. So just in terms of giving a perspective of the size of this industry in this very small country, we produce about 3.8 billion cubic feet of gas per day right now. Argentina produces about 4.3 at this point in time, billion cubic feet of gas per day. We produce roughly the same amount of gas that the UK produces. So Trinidad has, for a small country, a large production. So that large production goes into 55% goes to LNG. About 30% goes into ammonia and methanol, about 7% goes into power, and then we have some smaller industries. So we have to continuously feed that demand, and that requires us to keep investing in exploration. So the two major companies in Trinidad that are behind that, of course, are BP and Shell. So they've been continuously investing in exploration. We now have exploration taking place in deep water in Trinidad.
Which is very challenging for gas. I mean,
very challenging for gas.
In terms of commerciality, right?
You need very large deposits for gas to be commercial in deep water, like what we saw in Egypt in 2012 when they discovered the Zohr field. That field is now in production, but that was over 30 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. So exploration continues in deep water, and hopefully they'll find something that could commercially work there. Yeah. So that's Trinidad's challenge really is to continuously attract investment, which is investment aimed at exploration.
In the upstream to continue the reserve replacement.
Exactly.
Well, there was another piece of the panel which was fantastic, and it was about sort of what I would call the oil governance question, the question of avoiding Dutch disease. And obviously there's some countries, look, you guys are right there, miles away from Venezuela, but next door Guyana is also looking at ramping up from very little or zero to a huge oil production level. Share with us some of the comments you made about the oil governance, how you avoid Dutch disease, some of the principles. I mean, just briefly reiterate some of the points you made.
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's no secret what's happening in Guyana. It's unprecedented and historic. The first oil production is scheduled for Q1, first quarter 2020, and that's going to be at 120,000 barrels of oil per day, which will eventually ramp up to 750,000 barrels of oil per day by 2025. So that's a massive phase change. We're talking about the quadrupling and the quintupling of the economy over time. Yeah. So what that does, of course, it brings into focus the whole question of Dutch disease and how is this wealth managed. If you speak to the average Guyanese, and you ask them, what is your number one concern about this oil industry? Their number one concern would be that the money would be wasted. Sure. They would tell you they've seen this before with gold and manganese and so on. So there's this skepticism in Guyana about the benefits that this oil windfall could bring. So in terms of dealing with that, I would say to counteract Dutch disease, one really has to treat with the supply side of the economy. Because what tends to happen is that this huge inflow of cash causes government to spend governments like to spend money.
Of course.
Not just all governments like to spend money. And governments spend money on services, such as construction services and so on. And that then creates a expanding services sector. And that services sector begins to pull labor and resources from agriculture and mining, and those sectors eventually die. So in oil-producing countries, you would notice that, of course, the agricultural sector has gone, like in Venezuela. And other sectors have died because of this, of the overarching presence of oil. So what's the solution?
Yeah, exactly.
The solution would be Guyana has massive landmass. It has an infrastructure deficit. So some of that money has to be spent on upgrading and building out new infrastructure that will allow for efficiency in the mining sector, efficiency in agriculture. Investments have to be made. I would think huge investments have to be made in education, because you need to get your population up to speed, especially in terms of qualifications around petroleum geoscience, geology, petroleum engineering. And then, of course, there is healthcare, which is always important for your population. So I would focus there. And the other thing, of course, would be sovereign wealth fund.
Some kind of escrow, some kind of...
Sovereign wealth fund, which is, as you know, the most famous in the world is Norway. Sovereign wealth fund is well on the way in Guyana. There's a draft, there's a piece of legislation right now. I'm not sure if it's been passed, but it's been crafted with the help of the World Bank and so on, and it looks to be a fairly robust piece of legislation.
Based upon international best practice.
Because, Guyana is going to have, by my calculations, by the middle part of the next decade, they'll be looking at about $6 to $7 billion US in government revenue from oil only.
Wow.
So that's
astounding.
That's huge.
Well,
Considering that the current budget of the country is about $1.3 billion US when you do the conversion. So it gives you an idea of the multiplier and the magnitude that is coming to this country. So all that has to be well managed.
wow, we're going to certainly be talking about this for many years to come. As you point out, the numbers of production and just alone are going to be a piece of conversation. Thanks for joining us this year. Great to have you.
Thank you very much.
Hope to have you back to La Jolla again.
Okay.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Jeremy.